The Empire cannot win. If it goes up in flames,
it will burn very brightly.
We must stand together. We will be crushed.
welcome to the rebellion.
Okay, welcome along to the channel, everyone, and to our Andor Season 2 review show. Martin's back with me again this week to discuss this second segment, the second arc of the show, and also with us joining the rebellion, we've got Mr. Dez T and Mr. Scott Whitehouse. How are we going, guys?
Good, thank you.
Good,
Thanks, guys.
Brilliant.
Nice to be back.
Good to have you back as always. Yeah. Before we get into it, then, we always do our reminder. There will be spoilers in this, so be sure to have watched all 3 episodes before you check out this review show. Let's find out how our guests enjoyed the first arc from last week first, before we go into it too much. Des, what did you initially think of that first arc?
Yeah, very good. Very good. It's nice that you got a good chunk to watch. It was a bit probably the only problem I've got with it is trying to watch it all before you see any spoilers and reading it, because you got that much to watch. But no, really enjoyed it, which I sort of knew I would do. Going by season 1, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It had been a really long 29-month wait.
Yeah, hadn't it just?
I'd literally been counting the days for it. So no, I really enjoyed it. It was great to pick up what had happened to all of those characters and what was going on. I thought the story was, it was exciting. It felt very Star Warsy at times for me. I know a lot of people didn't necessarily feel that. I think, like a lot of people, it was a little bit on Yavin that might have been just slightly longer than it needed to be, and a little bit too comedic maybe. But overall, I absolutely loved it. I gave it 8.75 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to quite go up to 9, but it was close to 9. I could go without giving it 9. Hoping that there's better to, even better to come, or perhaps
definitely
high expectation.
Yeah. Des, what was your rating for the first arc?
I think I put in the comments, I think it was either 8.5 or 9. I just thought just the Yavin thing was just a little bit, I would say, meaningless, because I think it was the big reveal to see, we are on Yavin 4. So I thought that was sort of, it was almost worth the wait to get to that point.
And I'm sure there'll probably be more to come from that. Would there? Do you think?
Oh yeah, we've seen it in the trailers.
There you go. Yeah. Good. Well, then this week's episodes were another 3-part arc, taking place 3 years before the Battle of Yavin, 1 year after last week's arc, as we discussed last week. We followed the main storylines this time out that were pretty much all revolving around Gorman, which were Dedra, Sirill, Major Partagaz, and the ISB storyline. Mon Mothma and the politics side of things with Luthen and Skolden. Wilman with Saw Gerrera and his rebels, and also the resistance on Gorman, of course, where a lot of them popped up, and then the Andor and Bix storylines. Let's talk first then about the Dedra Miro, the Sirill and Partagaz ISB storyline. So Sirill's obviously on Gorman, and he's heading up this unit. How did we all feel about that? I'll start with you, Des.
Well, initially, as I was watching it yesterday, I'm just sort of writing down just a few notes. I just thought, Dedra and Sirill, have they split? Obviously, further down the line, they have, but they haven't, if that makes sense. It's all the spy and the espionage thing, it's all that sort of double agent sort of thing. He's been spied on, but he knows he's being spied on, which I'm not saying it sounds boring, but it grips you, and because you don't know, well, who's he, what's he with? Where's he going with that? Which I thought was really good, really, really good.
Yeah. What about you, Scott? How did you feel about Sirill's and Dedra's parts that they played in this arc?
I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was probably his best role across this arc, really, that he's had in the whole series. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and there was he was being tricked by Dedra, who's being sort of spun a line, and he was doing the same, and he was absolutely brilliant when he was meeting with the Gormans, and and he was so convincing with them, but all the while he was working against them, for this Imperial plot that he didn't even fully understand himself, but he was so proud of it when Major Partagas congratulates him. It was his best day of his life. I thought it was tremendous, and she's just fantastic as well. I mean, she didn't do as much to the art, really. She was just sort of in and out, but cold, calculating, but socially awkward. I mean, when he turns up after months of them being apart, that very awkward greeting in the door. Supposed to be a relationship. It was. It was quite amusing. There's a bit of humour in it, really.
They both play the parts very well. You can see that he's sort of snivelling and a little bit of a sad sort of life in a way, and whereas she's very stern and she knows what she wants. Martin, how did you enjoy this story?
Yeah, I mean, this was probably my favourite sort of storyline through the arc, I suppose. I must admit, at first I was getting a little bit frustrated with the first two episodes in general. I initially got quite frustrated, but when you sit and you actually watch it happening in front of you, everything starts to click into place, and how every scene that was in it and every bit of dialogue that they spoke was all part of this master plan to get this group of really inexperienced rebels, if you like, to cause mischief on Gorham, so that basically the galaxy would have no sympathy for Gorman when the certain stuff hits the fan, if you like. There'll be no outrage like there would be otherwise, and this is just the beginnings of that plan in these 3 episodes, and I just thought it was masterful the way it was done, absolutely masterful. And all the way from when he's talking to his mother at the beginning and he's feeding her all the information that she he wants her to hear, so because he knows he's been listened to. I thought it was excellent, and these two actors in this show are my MVPs thus far. I really enjoyed this storyline immensely. I thought it was excellent. And
it's quite nice to actually see Sirill almost playing a confident role. Do you know what I mean? He was very I think one of you said it earlier, he's the spy, and sort of moving, without getting too ahead of myself, moving into the second part of the arc, you've almost got that spy versus spy thing going on with him and Andor. Their paths almost cross, but they're not quite there. It was very, very enjoyable.
I think you make a good point, Adam, because we've been shown that Sirill's never had anyone show any confidence in him. He's always been put down, but now someone's shown some confidence in him. He's actually shining, isn't he? He's really showing what he's made of. And in another life, he probably could have been a high up ISB agent himself. And I think Scott alluded to it earlier. When he said, "I don't think I've ever been as happy as I am right now," wasn't because he was with Dedra. It was because he'd been given the plaudits by the head of the ISB, and that's all he's ever really wanted. So yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Speaking of the ISB, now we're sort of at this point in there where they were in the intelligence room, and they're all discussing everything between them, and the other officers are in there saying how difficult it is to get the intelligence because they're arresting so many people. Are things starting to slip? They don't have the manpower. Do we think this is a bit of a turning point now, Des?
Yeah, I suppose so. But it's interesting that they both Luthen has got too much going on. They've got too much going on. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I suppose it's all snowballing, and it's sort of getting out of control. So I suppose it's just how they sort of deal with all of that. Will be good going forward.
Yeah, and speaking of Luthen, I think that sort of moves us on to that next part quite nicely, because it almost feels like the people on the rebellion side are starting to lose it a little bit now as well. Luthen especially, we've seen him as being very confident throughout. But now there's a lot going on. Do you think that he's now sort of starting to slip in a way, Scott?
It certainly seemed like it. Or Clea particularly seemed to be, a little bit fraught with all those messages. I mean, one of the episodes starts with, the fact she's turning the dial and there's so many different
constantly
messages.
Trying to listen.
She's, it's kind of reflecting real life. Everyone, we all think we've got too many plates spinning, and it's clearly, what's going on there. There's too many people to listen to, and they're missing things. And this situation, she could have almost missed this thing with Davos Skulden and discovering the fake, and such like, and the danger of their recording device being discovered. So it could have so easily been missed, and that became like the main. Their main sort of mission for like the sort of like the final episode, didn't it? So definitely it seemed to be.
And the tension building to that, I don't want to get into it just yet, but the tension building to that was insane. It's incredible.
I think as well with Luthen, I think he's getting to the point now where things are starting to escalate, and he's desperate for something to happen, something major to happen, which is probably why he's really interested in perhaps having a presence on Gorman. And I think he probably knows it's not going to work out, and he probably knows that now Dedra is in charge there, something big's likely to happen, and he's willing to let it happen because he wants there to be the outrage, so that it might be. I think we know already the Gorman massacre is one of the things that unites the Rebel Alliance, creates it, if you like. So I think he's getting to the point now where he's not being as careful as he once was, because he just literally wants this to take off now, and whether it means he's not around anymore, it doesn't matter to him quite as much. He's taking more risks than he would have done before.
I suppose with the rebellion getting bigger, you've got more things to keep happy, and you've got to keep on top of a lot more things. And if he's doing it himself, he can't trust more people to come in to the loop because of it. But you still want the rebellion to get bigger. It's just trying to play off each. You want to become bigger, but at the same time, you don't want to lose your secrets.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, there were cracks in the team, weren't there? He was arguing with Cassian. Bix is having PTSD and is struggling. He's obviously sent Will off to Saw Gerrera, and Saw's going to keep him there or kill him or something. So things are sort of cracking a little bit, aren't they? He's losing a bit of control, it seems, of everything. And he and Claire were getting ratty with each other as well. So it's definitely pressure. And Cassian turning up at the door in the middle of the night as well. Things like that, and an argument in the open doorway that would never have happened sort of 2 or 3 years ago. When everything was so so much more measured and choreographed. Really, they put the smile on when it comes to the door.
Do you all think that perhaps if it comes to it, I don't know, and we don't know, but do you think if it comes to it that Dedra Meero will in some way betray Sirill, or she'll just let him go to the wind just to make sure that what she wants to happen happens? Or do you think that she might choose to take his side and perhaps go against the Empire in some way? What are your feelings on that?
Well, I mean, I've been thinking about this, trying to figure out if they would ever turn. I think the guests we had on last week all agreed that they were definitely Imperial Empire for life, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's tricky because you do see it in Sirill, don't you? You see him, the more he sort of uncovers things, the more you get the feeling that he may think, okay, this isn't right, I'm going to turn onto the other side. Do you think?
But he's acted the part of an anti-imperialist in his Bureau of Standards team. Amongst them, he's putting on a show. He's putting on a show for the Gormans. So he knows what the other perspective is. But then he goes back to Dedra and Partagaz, and he is 100% Imperial. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he'll change.
It's like a double agent, isn't he?
Yeah. Why would he say that with just Dedra Meero and just the three of them? Why would he say that there? Because he's impressing nobody.
Yeah. See, I'd go the opposite way. I think if anyone was to perhaps change their ways, it would be a real shock if it was Dedra Meero, not Sirill, who, you know, because I know her facial expression is very hard to read, but if you do watch them, she does seem very unsure a lot of the time in the way she's acting. But then I did read an interview with her today saying that, you know, she was told she's playing a psychopath. So
yeah,
I guess that answers my own question, really. So forget I even mentioned it.
Well, you never know. You never know. She might be saying that to throw herself.
Yes, true.
I mean, they're big stakes. Gorman's got a population of something like 850,000, and they're talking about basically annihilating them, aren't they, to get this mineral out of the planet, you know, core or something. So, you know, if anything's going to turn you, it's got to be that. But she knows what they're doing. She knows, you know, this is all.
It's her plan
for the Empire to destroy an entire planet's population.
Yeah.
Or to forcibly relocate.
Yeah. Part of me thinks that maybe it would be Sirill betraying Dedra because of his you know, his need for power or for praise, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, you know, they could go down that route.
Yeah. Does he betray Dedra not to go to the rebels, but to get higher up?
To get higher up in ISB,
yeah, that's not a bad shout.
That seems more plausible, really, than
yeah. Whether she would turn is another matter, I suppose. Yeah. One of you mentioned earlier about Wilman being sent off to meet Saw Gerrera. It was good to have Saw back, right?
Yeah.
He played a great part. Forrest Whitaker once again played the part really well. Yeah.
But is Wilmon, is he dead, do you think, or is he going to go down the same sort of route as Saul with the sort of, let's call it an addiction to the gas? Because he
quite possibly. I don't think it would kill him just yet. But I mean, with what we know about Rogue One, we're not likely to see a lot of these guys again. But how he dies, I don't think it's going to be the gases or the ride-on. I think that's what they called it. Rhydonium. Yeah. I don't think it's that's going to kill him. I think he's just going to get wrapped up in the whole end game, if you like. Yeah.
It's just after Brasso went last week. I was just thinking, are they going to try and knock one off each? You know, will Biggs go next in the next three? I don't know. Or like you say, will it be all in an end game shootout or something?
Yeah. I don't know, Scott. Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know. I think with Will, he wasn't expected to stay there, but I think by the end of that third episode, when he's breathing in that gas, it's almost like a bit of an initiation, wasn't it, into Saw's gang? And I think he'll end up staying with him. I know we don't see him in Rogue One, so presumably then between, you know, now and then, something happens to him. It was great seeing Saw and his gang, because a lot of them you do see in Rogue One. There are a lot of creatures, that great big white sort of wampa creature, and obviously the Tutu, and several others. You know, they're there in Rogue One, so that was brilliant. Brilliant seeing their and such. I hope we get to see them in action, doing something more than just taking off.
Yeah.
But, it was really good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I found the Saw Gerrera bits brilliant, but I also found them quite frustrating because I didn't really understand what that machine they were working on. I thought it was a bomb. I thought it was a bomb the whole time, And then when they got to the scene where they inserted it, I then thought it was going to sort of insert gas into the tubes and wherever those tubes led was an Imperial city and everyone would die. But no, actually, I found out after I read some of the notes in the episode notes, it's actually to take out the gas from the facility. So I was really confused a lot of the time of what was going on there, because obviously he doesn't speak that clearly anyway. But we did get a lot of insights from those scenes. So I think we now know why he has the mask in Rogue One. It wasn't to breathe; it was actually so he could suck in more Redonium. Because he obviously has quite a big addiction to it. So that I'm guessing, and also he said that it makes you go slightly mad. So that would perhaps explain his his madness and his not trusting people a little bit more. But I thought the one of the moments of the arc was his little speech, his Luthen-like speech that he gave to Wilman. That inspired him so much to take his breathing mask off and become, as Scott said, initiation is to become one of the Saw Gerrera's band of rebels. I really enjoyed that part, and I enjoyed it more once I'd read what he was actually doing, because I was really confused about what was actually happening.
But so is that just he was just getting that for his own pleasure, or is there another? Are they sort of getting it for another use as well?
Well, I'm assuming because there's so much, it was for something to do for their cause. But I mean, I'm sure he's using a bit of it for himself.
It's highly explosive, isn't it? So it's the one from that episode of The Mandalorian that they're transporting in the Juggernauts, and obviously they go too fast over too many bumps. They were watching it because it becomes more and more volatile. So I imagine they're gonna blow something up with this, or the majority of it, and he'll just keep a little stash.
So he talked a bit about his insurgency as well on Andor in the Clone Wars. I'm not familiar with that, Martin. Can you go into a bit more on that?
There was a 4-part arc. I think it was in season 5, and it has Saw Gerrera and his sister Steela, and they've got their own sort of rebel insurgency against the separatists on Onderon. And Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan with some of the clones go there to train them how to be insurgents and soldiers. And ultimately, spoiler alert, Steela is killed, which then makes Saw the man that we see over the course of video games, TV shows, and films, that we've come to know him. And it was really, really cool little callback that he mentioned that. And one of the lines he said when he was taking in the gas right at the end of his final scene, he called the gas his sister. I don't know if anyone caught that. And that to me kind of said, the pain that he's in still from his sister being killed in that battle. That's what he's held with him all this time and turned him into this person. And him being addicted to that gas, he needed it as much as he needs this revolution to take the pain away of losing his sister. So I thought that was I mean, obviously you'd have to be, a pretty big fan to sort of pick that up, but I mean, that's the thing about Andor. I think in the first season I was a little bit, they don't really introduce little tidbits like that, but in season 2 thus far there's been a lot of those little moments, and for super fans like myself, I lapped that up. I thought it was absolutely excellent.
Where are we? So talking of addictions and the drug addiction that Bix has got to sort of overcome her PTSD, where do we think they're going to go with that? I mean, is that going to be inevitably what takes her, Des, you think?
I hope not. You'd like to think now that, again, spoiler alert, Ghost has gone, is that put to bed now? We've sort of seen it and done it. But I suppose they could do. Time will tell. But for me, I hope that's it. I hope that's sort of with him going, it's gone.
You think that's enough to sort of stop her from using it, even though it's quite an addictive. I think Luthen said it was quite addictive, didn't he? Yeah,
and the more I think the more you do it, the less. I suppose, like with any sort of drug, the less it sort of is effective.
The less it works, yeah.
And obviously, the next week we're a year on again.
Of course, yeah. I guess we could find out next week then.
Yeah.
Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the same as Des. I think that whole sort of like little scene at the end where she gets revenge on Dr. Gorst and then walked away so confidently. You know, she pulled the hood on like Luthen does. She shoots that Imperial trooper down, and off she marches, and they blow the building up. And I think that was putting it to bed. I think that was just it, and she's back now. That was the impression I got from that. I mean, Luthen, she had that conversation with Luthen, and he kind of, you know, didn't send her on the mission that he was thinking of doing, and warned her about, you know, don't keep doing that. And you know, and I think then, although we didn't see it, we didn't see him feeding the information to them necessarily. But I think, you know, perhaps between him and Cassian, they'd worked out that was what she needed, and that put the demons to bed, really.
Yeah. I mean, we do probably want her to have a more heroic sort of death if it does come to that, I think, don't we? So yeah.
I think.
Go on.
No, I think I just want to reiterate. I agree with Des and Scott. I think that was the therapy session at the end where she shoots Dr. Gorst. I think, you know, that was her expelling her demons, if you like. And I think that was one of those scenes that we got from the previous arc that will perhaps set up the next episode, because I think the two of them are going to be off on a mission together somewhere, and that may possibly lead to her end in the next arc. If I have to be honest, the whole Bix stuff in the apartment, I was a bit like, oh, when's this scene going to finish? You know, I don't get me wrong, it was brilliantly acted, superbly written, but for me personally, I was like, you know, let's get on with more of the espionage and the, you know, in the Star Wars. You know, that to me was a bit too. I don't disagree with me if you like. I don't, honestly. It's just my opinion, but it just didn't feel like.
I do know what you mean.
And it's the 12-year-old kid in you that thinks that, and then the grown-up that's enjoying the show for its, you know, more adult themes. You know, you appreciate that, all that writing and performance and everything that's gone into it as well. Yeah. But there is that bit. Come on, let's get to the next.
I think when you watch Star Wars now, especially with the TV shows, especially in this great format of 3 episodes per week, I think for me personally, I know how short a life we've got with this, and I don't want any wasted seconds because it's that important to me and it's that good. So when something like this that didn't really sort of go with me really in these episodes, the whole taking the drug part, you're kind of like, oh no, you know, in your back of your brain, you're kind of, oh no, we're wasting precious minutes here. You know, we could be off with Andor back on Gorman, or we could be at the ISB headquarters, or, you know, but off air, Scott and I were having a small chat before we started recording, and I said to him, after 24 hours of it sitting with me, I actually did nearly a full 180, and I was like, I see why that's needed. And I, you know, and I did appreciate it a lot more, but the initial viewing, certain scenes like that, and there was a couple of scenes in the first arc that I was just kind of like, you know, let's move on now, let's move on. But you know, Andor is well known, and you know, is it Tony Gilroy or Henry Gilroy? I always forget.
Tony,
Tony Gilroy. He's the master at that smouldering, slow-paced dialogue and scenes. But
this is it, isn't it? This is it. We had a very similar thing in Series 1, which is why we always accused it of being somewhat sort of slow to begin with. But you realise that every arc, the first episode, they sort of pace it so well that it's, you know, the first episode is a little bit slow, and then it builds and builds and builds. By the end of episode 3, or the third of the arc, like, it is, the tension's just there, and it's just, I think they've actually paced it really well.
It's all important. It all matters, doesn't it? Because those first 3 episodes of season 1, if you don't invest in those, the power and the brilliance of episode 11, and especially episode 12,
exactly.
You know, some of that's lost on you if you don't remember some of those characters, if you don't invest in some of that.
100%.
That's what
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Andor's part in this. Then, as a spy, we get to see him in quite a sort of different role. You know, he's actually taken on a new persona in this point. How did we enjoy that? Because that was very different to what we've seen from him before, right, Des?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that action figure. that would be a nice silky cloak. Yeah.
What was his name? Valerian Sky or something? Is that right?
Yeah. They're very good. Yeah. When he was having the first meeting with the French resistance, which I don't want to call it a criticism, but they could have picked any outfits for the Gorman resistance, but it just I'll put in my notes hello, because I think they almost had that sort of, you know,
it was very on brand for that.
Again, not a criticism, but just a little niggle. But when they're sort of sparring off, basically he's saying to him, look, you've come to me, you just blatantly told me your resistance. I could be anybody. I thought, and then all of a sudden, let's have a look at the shop and how he sort of quickly went from this to that. I thought that was very well played.
Yeah, he did that role in the cafe really, really well.
Yeah, that was my second favourite scene of the episode. Was the cafe scene. I thought it was superb scene. And the you think of the Andor from 2 years ago, because obviously what we saw was 2 years ago at the end of season 1. To him now, he's getting to that character that we see in Rogue One. Now we're starting to recognise him a bit more, because I think we all said, didn't we? Oh, it's nothing like the Andor that we saw in Rogue One. He's out for himself, he just wants. But now you're starting to see that Luthen has really trained him well, and he knows what he's doing. I thought that was a great scene.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was really good. It was kind of like James Bond or Mission Impossible, wasn't it? Really, I thought that I sort of really loved this. Like it was really thrilling at times as well. And I think you mentioned earlier, Adam, there was that moment you thought him and Sirill were going to come face to face. That may yet happen, I suppose, because Sirill's still working behind the scenes, and Andor's going to get sent back to Gorman, isn't he? I mean, we've seen, I think, from the trailers that he's back there when a bit more kicks off. So there's still the potential that could happen and blow everything up. So yeah, I thought it was great. I mean, I get Dez's point about hello. They really did. I mean, I think they were going for like northern Italy. Apparently, I watched the classified program, and they picked all French actors, and so they've all got these French accents, and the clothing design is very kind of so
Italian really fashion.
Yeah, it's they've picked something for a reason. They've really gone to town on it, haven't they? But it's going to draw some of those sorts of remarks or criticisms even from some people, I suppose.
Yeah, I did want to talk a little bit about those. Sorry, Martin. I did want to talk a little bit about the costume and the set designs, actually, because a little bit different to what we've seen before, isn't it? I thought the costumes, especially, like you say, Des, they were kind of based around the Resistance style of things, but but you look at the costume that Sirill wore, which was very much a like leadership sort of outfit, if you like. Bit different, but I thought the costume design in this show has been really good so far. Yeah.
I love the ties. That's it's a tie but not a tie.
Yeah, it sort of starts halfway. Well, not halfway down. It just starts at
when Andor was wearing the outfit when he was pretending to be the fashion designer. I literally turned to Steph and said, "I'd wear that." Honestly, I did. I said I'd wear that. Not a problem. I would definitely go out to a dinner like that. I thought it was awesome. And it's not often you'd say that about a Star Wars outfit. Unless it was a stormtrooper outfit.
Well, yeah. Yeah, the set as well that they made for Gorman was quite incredible. But then again, the set design has been on point with this show all throughout season 1 and 2.
the scale of the set is just immense, isn't it? It's like they built Ferrix. They're focusing on Gorman, aren't they, for a good chunk of this season, and they've really built this immense the immense sort of plaza and the streets and even a lot of the shops they're really there, aren't they? So those, it's not just a shop front. You can go inside all of those, and I think that's absolutely amazing. Really,
it's very nice not to have the volume, isn't it? That because you watch. It looks great in The Mandalorian, but you kind of subconsciously know that they're standing in front of a screen. But with Andor, it's been fantastic. Real sets. It's been It goes to show you. If you put that effort in, it really, really does show. Instead of standing in front of a screen. So I really appreciate the real sets.
Yeah, the budget must be incredible on this show. I don't know. I don't actually know what it is, but it's just pretty impressive to watch.
Just the depth of the sets, and it's just all believable. And the more you look, the more you see. So definitely need to have more sort of viewings of it again when the dust settled.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. They put aliens in there that you don't even realize are there as well in a lot of cases. I don't know if you've noticed that. Just so subtle.
Yeah, we'll get on to aliens later.
Oh, okay. Well, one thing we haven't really gone into a great deal of detail with is the Mon Mothma and the politics side of things. So she's trying to sort of get the votes because we're starting to see in the background how powerful the Emperor is and how feared he is, if you like. What did you guys think of like Mon Mothma's part to play in this arc? I'll start with Des.
Yeah, I mean, she's talking to a lot, and it's love it or hate it. With the sequels, there's a lot of the aliens and the alien senators from the sequels that she's talking to. I think it just helps to sort of knit it all together. So yeah, she's doing her job. She's trying to rally people to a cause, or to well, not so much to a cause, but to sort of put a fight up against the Emperor, all officially. Like you've got to vote against him. So yeah, it's a good. And again, as a figure collector, I'm thinking I want him, I want her, him, this.
I just want to before I get Scott's opinions on it, I just want to thank you because I could not place where that character that she was talking to was from, and I was like, I've seen him before, but I couldn't remember which film it was. And you said it was the sequels. I was like, oh yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, he was the Chancellor.
Yeah, gets blown up by Starkiller Base, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Scott, how did you enjoy Mon's storyline?
What are these sequels you're all talking about?
Yeah.
I've got no idea.
Yeah.
Don't know. Yeah, she didn't have as much to do, really, did she? Over these three episodes, it wasn't
as in depth. No. Yeah.
And she'd been absolutely fantastic in the first arc. I thought she had so much to do. She's such a fantastic actress. So I was a little bit disappointed she didn't have as much to do. But everything she did was really pivotal. She's obviously trying to gain support against Palpatine. And a growing frustration you can see at that point that senator who's in the center, who's obviously taking his oath of office to the Emperor, and she's just gripping angrily. And then I loved her like sparring with Krennic as well. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. Nice to see you outside of the witness box. I thought she's obviously getting him into committees, isn't she? These scrutiny committees she's getting him on because she's trying to find out what he's up to, really. I thought, it was, every time she appeared was really important, and it was just sort of great to see that. But yeah, I'd like to see more. But we're going to see a lot more coming up. I know it's part of a whole. When we see the whole, we'll get there.
Yeah, interesting to see her come face to face with Krennic, right, Martin?
Yeah, I mean, after the bruising day that she'd had, with all the senators sort of, too fearful to vote against Palpatine, and then she has to go to all those. I think Merrin, her husband, said that there's over 100 new senators that have come in now, and they're obviously all, loyalty to the Emperor so that he gets more votes in the Senate. I thought there were very subtle scenes and there wasn't a huge amount of dialogue, but it kind of set the stage for what's happening to the Senate, and all leading up to that line. You know, the Emperor has dissolved the Senate from A New Hope, or Episode 4, as some people like to call it, so yeah, that was really great. But yeah, then we got to the party, and I mean, you know, you tell me to shut up if I go on too long, but that whole time at the party, and it was crisscrossing with the attack on the transport on Gorman. But I have to say the Gorman stuff for me was kind of like, okay, yeah, they're doing that, that's fine, we knew they were going to do it. But the stuff at the party and in his trophy room, I can honestly say I found it really difficult to watch. The where she was struggling to try and get the bug out of the bottom of that piece of artwork. I said to Steph, I might have to stop this in a minute, because it really it was like watching
the
something.
tension.
The tension got me, and I was absolutely hooked. And I was convinced at any moment she's going to get captured. And I was getting angry at the Imperial officer for not covering her. And I wasn't shouting at the screen, but I was talking to the screen. I was like, "Come on!" You know. So it worked for me. That whole scene took this episode from a certain grade up to another grade. It was my favorite moment in the entire episode. I really felt for the first time the fear that they have of the Empire. I absolutely love that scene. And as you say, Mon Mothma coming, you know, in confronting Krennic and arguing over, you know, two different versions of history, which is something we've seen in our own history many times. You know, the victor, or what's the phrase, you know, history is one written by the victor, or something like that. And you know, so I thought that whole battle between the two of them was absolutely brilliant. Krennic wasn't going to give a mile, she wasn't going to give an inch. You know, it was absolutely brilliant. And as they were getting closer and closer as they were walking round to them trying to get the bug out. And it was so well done. I didn't know whether she got it out or not until they walked out of the party. And to relieve the tension, she just turned to him and said, "Oh, we should have just shot Krennic." And then they both started laughing. And it was that scene was written so perfectly that it instantly, I laughed and giggled at that as well, because the tension in me just went at the same time. And I thought, how incredible have they written that scene and filmed it, directed it, edited it, so that they were walking out of the party and you still didn't know whether she'd got it or not. And the only way you knew was when she made that little joke. I think that is masterful, absolutely masterful writing. So I will now pass over to one of the other guys, because otherwise I'll keep going on.
I must admit, Claire, I think she is my favourite character in it. I think she's
brilliant.
She's just very understated. How she comes across as Luthen's second in command, if you like. But yeah, and it proves that her doing that, she's a doer. She's an operative. She can get on the ground and do things. You know. So, I do like her.
Yeah.
But yeah, tension was up there.
Yes, yeah, it was. Yeah, Scott, enjoyable scene, hey?
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I don't think there's a lot more I can say. I mean, they certainly do parties quite well, don't they, in Andor? You know, there's been a few where there's the high tension. I remember the one in the first season where Mon's talking to Tay and she's saying, "Oh, Perrin's coming over, just smile." And there's a lot of, you know, hiding what people are really saying or meaning in these scenes. There's a lot going on, and they're using parties as quite a good situation to put people together. And again, at the wedding as well last week, it was done really well.
Yeah.
So, really good.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I think it all goes back to what I sort of said earlier about the pacing of it and how it starts off slow, but by the end, it's right up there, like you guys said. It's so tense, and it's so, I want to say all action, even though it's not all action. Do you know what I mean?
You come out of it as exhausted as if you just watched John Wick. Does that make sense? So, you know, mentally, you know, you're exhausted from everything, because as you say, that slow build up to the end, it really hooks you. And has your brain swirling by the end. And as I said earlier, you sleep on it, and then you realise, oh, actually, that was because of that. And I'm sure when we do a rewatch of this, we'll be noticing stuff for ages. And that's quite a big thing in Star Wars in general. Watching the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, I still watch them both now, and I still notice new things that are going on in the background. So I think that's a staple of Star Wars, and I think in a different way they've done it with the writing in this show. I think, it's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I think the only thing that we haven't covered so far, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only thing I can think of is the death of Cinta. She didn't have quite as big a part to play this season, but we lost Brasto last week. We've lost her this week. How many are we going to lose next week, and who is it going to be?
Yeah,
because it seems that that's kind of the route that he's going down with the third episode of the arc. We're going to lose somebody, one of the main players. So, any thoughts to that, Des?
Yeah, it was a shame how she died, and again, when you heard the gunshot, but then you see the two guys who were struggling together, sort of get up and walk about. You think, well, who's died? And then also it cuts to Cinta. But I think it was the ineptitude, if for want of a better word, of the resistance. They were told not to bring any blasters. Only Val and Cinta were to have blasters. Yet he brings a blaster and buggers it up, basically.
Yeah.
And dies, and that's why Val gives him the
Val lets him know about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, but then it's very much. I mean, I've put in my notes what I was thinking about it today. It's very Game of Thrones. I don't like to compare it to Game of Thrones or anything like that, but how you go to Luthen, then you go to Andor, then you go to Vale or to Mon, or to different sort of different story arcs, very much like Game of Thrones does. And as well, everybody's expendable. Obviously, Andor's gonna live because he's in Rogue One. We know that.
Yeah.
So anybody can die. Anybody will die. So which is, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Scott, any predictions on who we might lose next?
I mean, Will would seem like the obvious one because we've got less invested in him, I suppose. He's a lesser character and he's out on his own, and but that doesn't mean that's what will happen. I mean, we're expecting a lot more people to die. They don't, I suppose, because they're not in Rogue One or Star Wars Beyond. They don't have to die, but we're presuming they probably will because their deaths will put Cassian in the place that he needs to be at the start of Rogue One.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how we get to that point. What happens to people? I mean, people are being changed by these losses, aren't they? Each time someone goes, Vel's now changed, and her response to Cinta's, completely needless. And death was, absolutely tremendous. Probably that character's best dialogue, best performance, probably that she's had. She was tremendous.
Agreed.
In that moment. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. What does that do to her? What happens with her next as well? Will she survive? Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's.
Whoa.
Go on.
I need to have my say on that bit. I mean, Cinta.
Okay.
First of all, as soon as the blaster went off, it went straight over to Vel, and she turned and looked, and you knew it was Cinta that had died, and it was a bit heartbreaking, to be honest with you, because they just reconnected. The thing is, that's the sort of thing where I would turn to Steph and say, she's dead at the end of this episode, but I didn't for some reason, and it got me. It really got me. I was really shocked that they'd killed her. So I thought that was worth mentioning. And as I say, it was quite heartbreaking to see that happen. But as Scott and Des both said, it's changed. Every character is getting changed gradually as we're getting towards the end of the show. And this was Vel's, this is what her change was going to be. And as for a prediction, I think Bix is nailed on to die in the next episode.
Do you think the twist of
nailed on, because the final episode will be a year before Rogue One, and that'll be Cassian, angry Cassian, you know. So I mean, I'm totally guessing, but that was how I yeah. I don't. I've not got any inside info.
No. I my thought is that a lot of them are just going to get tied up in this Gorman massacre, and that's how we're going to sort of see the end of a lot of their lives. Let's sort of clear up any outstanding notes that we've missed though, before we get on to ratings. Des.
A couple of things that made me smile: the security guards watching the pod racing. Early on, I thought that was sort of good. I think that's about it, really. I think of what we've talked about. Again, okay. Oh, Ruby Wax.
Oh.
It was Ruby Wax.
I did. I put that in my notes. Is it Ruby Wax?
That, but oh no.
Ruby Wax. Is that akin to Jack Black and Lizzo? I think it is, and it's shocking. It shouldn't be in there. I was absolutely mortified when that happened, and I'll just say, in my opinion, Star Wars and daytime television scenes. I'm sorry, but you know, I don't want to be negative about anything with Star Wars, but no. If it happens, I don't want to see it. But then they have to put it in because that's how the propaganda is working. So I understand it, but I don't know. I just got what's the thing with the Hunger Games? It just smacked of Hunger Games to me. That character. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Go on, mate.
And the slow roasting of the massive.
Yes.
Was
nice
a bit sort of, you know, because if it's a bit like a dog.
Yeah,
sort of, that sort of, it's a bit, but it made me sort of smile and a bit like the monkey lizard being sort of spit roasted. A bit of a blink and you miss it, but again, it's like we were saying, watch it again, you'll pick up these things,
pick up more,
even more,
Yeah, Scott.
I suppose the only thing I can see in my notes. And it's been around in social media. Obviously, Bale Orana made a brief appearance, and it wasn't Jimmy Smits. It's
he had
it's one of those things, isn't it? He wasn't available, so
he was. I was going to say.
I think I'm glad that they need. Presumably, we need the character. We've always understood, really, since the original Star Wars, that he was somehow instrumental in the rebellion. So we do need the character. So
we'll see him play a bigger part, I expect.
I hope so in the coming second half anyway. But that was just a little introduction to him. But that's about all I've put down. I like seeing that Dedra's attendant had been promoted. It looked like they'd booted Blevin out, and he got his seat. And he's like an excited kid, who's just been promoted, and he was at the, it's like the first time he'd been invited to one of these posh parties. I just enjoyed that. It's just more great character development. Really, I thought he was brilliant. He was like a nothing character in the first season, but brilliantly written for, and really instrumental in the end. But then, in these episodes, he's sort of growing again. So it's just another example of the brilliant character development in this show.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Martin, onto your notes.
Okay, no Astromechs. What's going on? 6 episodes.
There was an Astromech. There was an Astromech.
Really?
It was the R5 in the on the Resistance base.
Oh, okay, fair. Okay, I stand corrected. All right, I'll cut that out in the edit.
I spotted that straight away.
But maybe it was because it was Dakar from The Force Awakens that they were located at. Which is what put me off the fact that there was an Astromech there. So that's kind of two there in one. I didn't realize that obviously that there has already been a Gorman massacre on top of the one that we're going to get probably next week. So, and I think that's an EU reference. Tarkin in the EU killed a load of people because he landed his ship on them. So that was kind of interesting. I did have to read up about that because I didn't know that existed. Pod race, as Des mentioned, And one thing I spotted, which I really liked, was I don't know if anyone spotted in Sirill's office where all the windows were. He had a platform that he walked across, and down below either side were all the people that worked for him. How much did that look like an Imperial Star Destroyer bridge? I really liked that. I thought that was excellent bit of design.
Brilliant.
And no classic aliens is the only thing I'd like to say. We haven't seen one alien. Oh god, I'm gonna get corrected again. Aren't I?
Yeah. There was after Cassian went and got the disguise to go to Gorman, he walked past a Bith.
I remember that now, yes, because I even shouted to Steph, look, it's a Bith. It was down the stairs, wasn't it? Oh, God, I'm going to have loads of editing to do now. Thanks, Scott. I can't make myself look stupid.
Now, the guy who was the main sort of spokesperson in the Senate.
Oh, yes, good point. Yep.
Now, I didn't recognise his species.
No.
But
no,
for me, I've never watched any of the superhero films, but he looked like... who's the main bad guy with the gauntlet thing? Thanos. I thought he reminded me a bit of him. Whether that's just me being stupid, probably is.
Yeah, I love to see. I love anything when we see the Senate, because it just gives me those prequel vibes. But I was like, well, why is Masamida not? Why have they not just got someone dressed up as Masamida or Sly Moore doing that? That was, there's, this show hasn't made many bad steps, if any, and it's things like that. I'm always like, well, you've got the costume somewhere, just bang it on somebody, and it's Sly Moore, and everyone goes, oh wow, it's Sly Moore from the prequels.
Wasn't he one of the new senators declaring allegiance to the Empire, though? Wasn't it? I thought that's what that scene was. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that perhaps there was going to be a procession of them would pop up in there and declare.
I got the impression that he said it, and then they all had to repeat it, because Mon Mothma was in her own booth, wasn't she, when she had to do it, and she was like squeezing the side of the pod as she was trying to say it when she couldn't say it. But I might be wrong. But yeah, it was just a small thing. But,
a second viewing's needed, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Try and fit that in at some point. Yeah. Right. Let's get our ratings then out of 10. Des, for this week, this arc.
I think a good solid 9. Definitely a good solid 9. I think, the thing again, I don't want to make too much of a deal of it, but the sort of resistance with the sort of berets and the Macintosh sort of just made me feel a bit, again, get over it, Des. Don't sort of worry about it too much. But but a good 9.
Yeah. Okay, Scott.
I think I'm gonna stick on 8.75.
Yeah.
It's nearly 9, but it just waiting for the 9.
I get that. It's all still building, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Martin.
Yep. As you say, it's all building, and like from my last review was 8 out of 10, so it's building to 8.5 out of 10 for this arc. Let's be quite frank. Giving it 8.5, I feel absolutely embarrassed about, because I was giving Skeleton Crew episodes 8s and stuff like that. But I think if I was to watch them now after watching this, they would be like 6s and 7s. Some of those episodes, not even 7s, because it's a different show. I know. But,
I think you look at it in a different way. So you're still rating it. You're not comparing the two.
No. So 8.5. But if this was Skeleton Crew, it would have been a 10.
Yeah. So I think I went fairly low last week. I did 7.5 out of 10. But I think this is going to be 8. And part of me worries that I'm going to be building it up each week, but that might just be the nature of the beast and the way the show goes. Yeah, it just gets better and better. Which who can complain about that?
We're halfway through now, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're 6 episodes in, so we're halfway through.
That's it. Depress us at the end there, Des.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for coming on and chatting with us about that. That was good fun.
Not a problem.
Well, thank you everyone out there for watching us. Please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you enjoyed this one. Come back next week where we'll catch up on the 3rd arc. 2 years before Battle of Yavin. See you later.